and let's dive into our session. Thank you all so much for joining today to MadeFor's Ask a UX'er session. Before I start with lining up the objectives of today and doing a round of introductions, I quickly wanted to walk through some of the other points. So we'd love to see everyone's faces. I already see some on my screen, not all of them. So if you have the opportunity to put your camera on, that would be lovely. Also, we are recording today's session, both for learning purposes and to create some small social media snippets, because we'd love to share today's experience also with more people. You have received a link to the Miro board that you can now see on my screen in this chat. So have a look and see if you are able to access it. I will reshare it again in a bit so that everyone can join the board. And interaction is a really big part of today's session. So make sure you've got your questions prepared and the topics that you like to discuss, and then we're ready to go. All right, talking about the objectives of today. So as said, interaction is a really big part, and what we really want to do is to get a good understanding of what a job in user experience actually entails. So we have our two experts with us today who are going to tell all about it and share their experiences, so that we hopefully get to understand if a role in UX is something for you, for your teams maybe, or for your organization. And as I said, it's about your questions. So please make sure to submit all the topics or things you would like to discuss today. Put it on the Miro board or use the Zoom chat, but we will talk about the setup in a bit of a later stage. So how are we going to go about it? We're going to do a bit of introduction so that you have an understanding who you have in front of you. And then we are going to talk about some of the setup questions on the board already that are under the category of career, skills, and business. And then afterwards, we're talking about anything we might have missed or questions that occurred maybe from the conversations we are already having or topics you have prepared. All right, so who are we actually? I will start with giving a brief introduction about myself. My name is Barbara van der Linde. I am the community manager in learning design at MadeFor. MadeFor, for whom are not aware or known with the organization, is a customer experience learning organization. So we teach in a variety of different capabilities to upskill CX professionals or people that want to start working in the CX field. I have a background in communications and PR and are mainly responsible for managing MadeFor social and digital channels, and am a producer on MadeFor bootcamps. And I am passionate about learning design, is another fun fact about myself. Heather, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Barbara. So I'm Heather Beveridge. I am an user experience designer at Beveridge, which is a customer experience consultancy. I have a branding and visual communications background, and have more recently kind of moved into UX over the past year. So quite a nice perspective there. I have 8 years working in the design industry, previously in Scotland, now in Amsterdam. And yeah, I joined MadeFor Bootcamp last year, so also a big fan.
Great, thank you so much, Heather. Stephen.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm Stephen Shaw, and I have been working in design for probably over 25 years now. Art school in Glasgow and Belfast before UX was a thing, and then design for communications, motion graphics, and visual effects, and then ultimately design for digital platforms that became UX. So I guess most recently I've been working on design for the contact tracing apps in Ireland and Scotland, and doing some more work with BBC and with other broadcasters as well.
Great, thank you so much. So now you know who we are. Besides explaining how the Miro board works, we're also quite curious who we have in front of us. So I see not everyone is in the chat yet, so I will also share the link again. And let's browse around a bit on the Miro board. I'm not sure who of you are already familiar with Miro and who are not. Miro, as you can see on the sides here, has a lot of features. Don't worry, we're not going to use them all today. We're actually just going to focus on two main elements of them. So that's the sticky notes and the voting. And for this moment, especially, we're just going to focus on the sticky notes. If you look at the little toolbar on the left-hand side, you will see a little icon here that says sticky note. And if you click on it, you can pick a color of your choice, select it, and just drop it in the box underneath here that we are going to use. So what we are really curious about is to understand your current knowledge of UX. Just as a bit of an understanding who we have in front of us and what brings you here today. So I will set a quick timer of a minute, just really quickly. If you have some difficulties or not fully aware yet, please feel free to unmute yourself or just pop a question in the chat, and I'm happy to help you. See, some are already figuring it out. That's awesome. For those who just joined, I will again pop the Miro link in the chat. Welcome. And we'd love to get to know who you have in front of us. So grab a sticky note on the left side of the toolbar, click it, select your color, and drag it into the little box here. And elaborate a bit what your current knowledge of UX is, maybe what you're curious about learning today, and share it with the group. All right. Well, I see some people are still figuring it out, and that's totally fine. Can be a lot the first time, so take your time and just navigate through the board a bit while we are going into the actual Q&A session. So, as we said, the questions, it's all up to you, but we want to have a bit of a kickstart with a first set of questions that we want to talk through. As you can see, there are some sticky notes outlined on the board here already with some questions written on them. And what we would like you to do is to vote for the questions you would like to get answered first. So in a couple of seconds, I'm going to launch the voting, and you can just click on the sticky note, basically just like clicking on the sticky note on the board, and cast your vote that way. If we have missed anything, or you have questions that might reoccur from the conversations that we have, you are free to just grab another sticky note, pop it into the little canvas that you see underneath, and write down your questions. And we will make sure to go through all of these at the end of the 5 questions that we have answered. If you find it difficult to navigate through Miro, also feel free to put it in the Zoom chat. We will make sure to have a look at either and discuss all of them. Does that make sense? Any questions? Ready to vote? Yes? All right. So you have 2 votes. Just pick 2 of the questions. I will start the timer now. You have approximately 1 minute, so have a look, read through them, and we will see what our most voted stickies are. All right, I think we're almost down a minute and can see the results. Hopefully everyone was able to have a scan through these and selected 2 sticky notes that they would like to have answers on. Ah. going to end the voting for all, and let's have a look. Processing the results. Let's see. Okay, we have a bit of a tie, but that's fine. Let's see how far we are getting. I see the most popular one is this one. What are the key skills to master as a UX'er? After that, what will I spend most of my time doing as a UX'er? And then we have a bunch of other questions. I think let's just go through them. Let's see how far we get. And as mentioned, if you have any questions or topics that recur from there on, feel free to put them either in the chat or on the board. I will stop sharing my screen so that we can really dive into the conversation, but please feel free to submit it. I will keep my eye on the Miro board. All right. So let me see. Yes, I see everyone in front of me now. That's awesome. Well, let's start with the first one just and see who would like to answer it first. Maybe Stephen, I can ask you the key skills to master as a UX'er. What is your take on that?
Okay, so there are a lot of skills. There's a very broad skill base needed, although usually people focus on a few. I mean, you need to know how to conduct research. You need to know how to interpret findings from research. You need to know how to sketch and draw and visualize and communicate. I think maybe the one for me that is most often overlooked is you need to really learn how to write well, not just creative writing, but writing for, or business writing, but writing for microcopy, for small things, understanding words people use and understanding the different reading ages and the way in which products need to accommodate for those. So yeah, for me, being a great writer is a great start for a UXer.
Nice. All right, Heather, what's your take on that? Would you agree with that? Or do you have any others in mind maybe to add?
I think I agree. It's UX is so kind of varied. There's so many stages. I mean, Stephen and I actually had a quick chat about this before, and I think you can actually bring your background. So I work very closely at the moment with somebody who used to be in accounting, and now he's a UX designer. So he is actually bringing like his analytical thoughts, his ability to bring insights and really master the data that he gets from his research. And kind of that is his superpower in UX. So we talk about this thing like you can have a superpower, like one section that you, or one part of the process that you're really into and kind of excel in. And that's kind of what your sales pitch is as well for yourself. That's what you bring to the team. So there's a lot of important skills, but I think also it's good to have knowledge in them all and then bring your background to it.
Yeah, and some indeed, as you said, your superpowers that you maybe personally excel at, or you maybe find some more common ground in that. Do you have a specific one for yourself in mind?
Good question. I think, I don't know, maybe my branding and communications background. So I like to lift my head out of like the depths of the product and the UX and the interface and everything, and kind of look at the journey as a whole, and the offline and online kind of circumstances and how it's approached by customers. So maybe more the branding side, how the brand is represented by this product, could bring to the table. It's my superpower.
Nice. And Stephen, what is your superpower?
Oh, there's so many. I don't know.
Modest.
I think I would probably say that my ability to take the insight from the raw research is maybe something that I've found that I can do a little bit more successfully than some others. If that sounds a bit arrogant, I apologize. I think research is a lot more complex than just asking people stuff and then writing down what they say. And I find that I'm better at that maybe than I expected. And a few years ago, I did some more research and private study into it and found out a lot more about it. So yeah, that's probably what I try to lead on in what I do.
Nice. I think it's interesting also to hear you both talking about a lot of different elements when it comes to UX and it having quite a broad spectrum of activities maybe that you can focus on, which is a good bridge to the second question, I think. So if we talk about what you will spend most of your time doing as a UXer, can you think of a specific thing? Stephen, maybe you can answer this one.
I guess you spend a lot more time doing facilitation. and running sessions of workshops, research sessions than perhaps you might realize. UX is people talk about the UX UI conundrum. They're fundamentally different activities. One is a creative act of making an interface and thinking about usability, and the other is very much about defining the problem and understanding what the needs are. And the two are related, and you can do both. That's cool. But I think I probably do more in the way of talking to people, investigating the issues, understanding the issues, and helping, especially now that we're all in sort of Zoom land. You know, how do we do that? How do we still have meaningful interviews and engagements with different people?
That's a great point. And I know from an earlier conversation I also had with Heather about this, actually talking to people that I asked you actually this question and you said the same, right? Like at least what you should do most as UXer. Is that still something you believe, Heather?
Yeah, I think the clue is in the name, isn't it? Like user experience. So you should be spending the majority of your time with the user, not thinking too much about having like a refined design or anything to show them. I mean, it's the sooner you can speak to them and the more times you can speak to them, the better product you're going to have, or the better results going to come out of it. So yeah, most of your time should be spent with users, I'd say.
Nice, great. Thank you so much for that insight. All right, so during the introductions already, we got to know you a bit better, of course, and knowing your design backgrounds, both of you. But I think people are also interested to know when you approximately started your career as UXer, or if you did something maybe before that. Stephen, would you like to elaborate on that?
Sure. I mean, before UX, there was human-centered design or user-centered design or customer-centered design. And really, I guess the transition for me from a more sort of traditional sort of design for communications background was when kind of Web 2.0 kicked off and people started to really care about the usability of the internet and not just the kind of creative expression. And then when mobile started and people began to realize that we need to understand how to design for all these different kinds of experiences, then it felt like, okay, now this is a discipline that I can engage with and that we can advise our clients on in a meaningful way. So yeah, I suppose user experience is essentially digital, and it was the rise of digital that saw the beginning for me.
Great. And Heather, when did it start for you?
I think it's always been something that's been present, as in my personal career journey. Yeah. Yeah, so coming from the design background again, I mean, you're always kind of thinking about the overall presence, so like over digital, print, online, offline. So there was kind of this knowledge, or this, like, we were designing for web, but then it was never really with a proper UX process or something that did all the research, and now something that we know today is really needed, to kind of, yeah, speak to the user more often. And I think that's something that's becoming more apparent to a lot of people, that there needs to be budget and there needs to be time spent into a digital presence, because it's mainly where brand relationships are built these days. Personally, I did the UX bootcamp last summer, I think, just to kind of get my knowledge on the process and how to kind of use it with actual clients and day-to-day practice. And then from that was able to kind of start changing it. And I mean, you can't apply the same process every time as well. So it's kind of learning the basics and then starting to experiment with it in different projects and tailor a new kind of process that you use each time. So yeah, I would say, I think maybe about a year ago, the UX skills started to be kind of built.
I think you raised a really interesting point there as well, Heather, in that in the past there were the disciplines like print and digital, and there wasn't really a unifying concept to join them together. And UX kind of did that. It said, look, the brand is the product and the brand is the experience. And let's stop thinking about digital as a separate channel and unify the customer experience around all of them, which is really what UX is.
Yeah, true.
Great. I think, and also Heather, you mentioned that already about the the necessity of the role, right? And how important it now also is for teams and for organizations. We know that, but what type of value do you think it brings to organizations, or how can you explain that best? Stephen, maybe this is something you can answer on.
I think what you can do is you can demonstrate that, being customer centered is obviously going to be fundamental, even if you're a business that doesn't talk about customers, if, like public sector, for instance. And I think you can make decision making in the organization an awful lot more well informed when you put the user or the customer experience at the heart of it. So you can engage with all different elements of our organization and add value everywhere, not just on the product side.
Heather, do you have anything to add to that, or do you agree?
I think I agree. Yeah, I think it's about bringing all teams together and working kind of towards the customer, and all in alignment rather than kind of siloed working and like separate departments with separate goals. Sorry.
Absolutely. And I know this isn't one of the picked up questions, but it's an interesting point to raise. As you said, it's not about working in silos or just a siloed team. I believe there are a lot of other disciplines that you work with, maybe not on a daily basis, but quite frequent, that is necessary to actually deliver that experience. Stephen, maybe you can tell a bit more about that.
Absolutely. In a way, you have an opportunity to reach out across an organization, and the most interesting and often the most powerful insights you get from user experience is when you're actually talking to people on the front line, whether that's customers or whether that's people using the products. We did an exercise a few years ago, an experience for a building supplies manufacturer, a big global concrete company, and they needed to change the way deliveries were managed and the way people could expect to receive stuff. And there was a lot of work done on building sites in the south of England, in France, and to the north of Scotland to understand the contextual accessibility challenges that would be there. If you're standing in the snow, a mobile app isn't really a great way to engage with some information. But equally, if we hadn't gone there, if we hadn't actually met those people, would we have really fully understood the needs? I don't think so. So yeah, it's you get to reach out, and that's probably one of the most interesting things about the job. You see all these different people's lives and the problems, and you get all excited about how you can maybe solve the problems.
Great. Just a quick reminder in between, because I see we have approximately 5 minutes left. Feel free to pop in any questions or any topics that you'd like to discuss still, either on the Miro board or in the chat. We will just keep chatting, of course, in between, but don't feel afraid to just pop in any questions that you might have. It is, of course, after all, your session, so don't be afraid to do so. Going into one of the other voted for questions then, and I think this is a really fun question. What would you consider a design failure in a product? Stephen, just now when we secretly already talked about this, you had a great example, I think.
My pet hate is when an experience asks you to repeat yourself. So, putting aside all the usual mistakes that people make, I think making a selection or having to input information more than once is really frustrating for just about everybody. And it makes you think that the system thinks you're stupid. So that would be an obvious design failure that is easy to avoid.
Absolutely. I think indeed everyone can recognize that, probably, that's just something that's not worth your time and you just want to have over with. Heather, can you think of one, maybe a personal pet peeve indeed?
Yeah, I think it ties in with Stephen's a little bit. It's like this personalization for the user, like that you really don't know them and you kind of prove that. But I also have a horrible example. So I think they hadn't considered the whole flow or how the user might approach kind of this situation. So it was a password reset on a government website. And they asked me to give the answer to my secret question without giving me the secret question. So I was asked, they asked me to answer the question without telling me what the question was, which is probably not the best experience and not something that they'd thought through that well. I then went to the phone lines to try and fix it that way, but also had no luck. So yeah, online and offline kind of failing there.
That's a complete challenge in itself. Yes, I can imagine. Great examples, great examples. Just again, pointing out to people, if there are any questions or topics to be discussed, please let us know. One of the last voted for questions on the board is the average salary for starting UX'er. Are there any insights into that you can share?
I think in the Netherlands, the average salary would be like 30 to 60, but that it's all dependent on your background, how many years experience, where you've come from, and what you're working in, like if it's in-house consultancy or freelance. I mean, there's so many variables, so probably all I can bring to that question.
No, that totally makes sense. And as you said already, also very dependent, of course, on the industry, the size of the organization, the client base, I can imagine. Stephen, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, where we're based in the north of Ireland, I guess there's not, the salaries are a little bit less than that, but not much. It's in that range, definitely. And yes, level of experience, level of responsibility will make a big difference. I know there are some agencies that we've done work with in the east coast of the States, and they're, commonly paying 150 to 200K for senior UXers. So there's a huge range of salaries depending on where you're based in the world. But I think that's probably going to be flattened a little as people start to realize that they can work with people wherever they are. And it'll be a wee bit less regional.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. So I see we are out of time. Haven't seen any other questions coming by. So I hope and assume that then we've covered a good scope of what it actually is to work in UX. So thank you so much to both Stephen and Heather for providing this insight into their UX roles. And thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you had a great time and a bit better understanding of what a role and a job in UX actually entails. If you want to learn more, know more about UX, then feel free and join us in signing up for the UX Bootcamp. We're starting a new one March 12th from the top of my head. Let me quickly show where you can find it on the Miro. Yes, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. But of course, if you want to learn more first, or maybe you want to have a chat with us first to get a bit more insights and the details from our bootcamp formats, please feel free to reach out by clicking here. We currently have a great deal where our bootcamps have a 60% off discount. So it is, of course, a limited offer. So please feel free to check out our websites. And if there's any questions, as I said, feel free to reach out. The last thing I will do is ask you to fill out a quick poll survey about your experience today. We're always keen on getting your feedback and wanting to improve. And if there are no further questions or comments, the only thing that rests me is to thank you again and wishing you all a really nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.